Hello everyone. In today's video, I'm going to be covering Unreal Engine's multi-user toolset. So, what is this toolset and why is it useful? Well, if you think about it, collaboration is the key to every successful project. But teamwork, as projects scale, can often start to become quite difficult to manage and maintain. This is where Unreal Engine's multi-user editing helps alleviate and potentially solve this, allowing teams to collaborate in real time. So what is exactly this multi-user editing? Well, it's a feature obviously within the engine that allows multiple users to work on the same project at the same time. It operates using a client-server model, which ensures everyone stays synchronized in real time across that project. In it, any changes that are made by you or your teammates are visible instantly to each other. So again, really reinforcing that real-time collaboration. It uses lightweight transaction-based systems. So instead of things and sending entire assets back and forth, only specific changes are transmitted, keeping things fast and efficient. Any changes are temporary until saved. So it uses a virtual sandbox model. This means you won't accidentally overwrite your teammates' work. So that would really help. So why is it important and who would use it? Well, to me it's useful for so many different groups. For example, for students, it simplifies group projects by allowing everyone to contribute in real time without waiting their turn or passing files back and forth. So again, everybody can join in, see the project, make their changes, and hopefully come to an agreement of what's best for the project. For indie developers, it can boost productivity. So your team can collaborate remotely, iterate faster, and avoid headaches like overwritten files or conflicting edits. And then for industry professionals, so for example, a team on a virtual production shoot, so the director, the DOP, the virtual production supervisors can all get together, use a multi-user session, and come to the common agreement of what the shoot and the scene should actually be set up like. So again, incredibly powerful and useful. So if you think about it, it's almost like the Google Docs of Unreal Engine. So similarly, in Google Docs, everyone can work on the same file, see updates in real time, and avoid overwriting each other's work. Multi-user editing also allows for this. So in this tutorial, I'm going to cover everything you need to know about multi-user editing. So including, I'm going to show you how to set it up step by step. So I'm going to show you how to create a project and then enable the correct plugins, and then hopefully we'll connect multiple machines together over the same local area network and get them talking. So to get them talking, we're going to need a few things enabled in the engine. So we're going to create a server, a multi-user server. Then once we've got this server created, we're going to create these things called sessions. So I'm going to show you how to create, join, and leave sessions as and when needed. When you're inside a session, I'm going to show you how to collaborate effectively. So the do's and don'ts, the things you can and can't do, and the things you'll see instantly. And then once we're finished with the project, we're going to show you how to persist those changes so nothing gets lost at the end of that working day. So if you think about it, this is really a key tool that would go really hand in hand with a thing called source control. So source control is a thing like Git or Perforce that tracks your history of changes made to your project. So it's an awesome system that acts like a time machine for your work. It allows things to happen such as rolling back to earlier versions if something breaks. So if somebody unintentionally adds a bit of code or does something to a level that breaks it, if you have source control enabled, you can roll back to an earlier version of it and hopefully avert any panics. It also allows you to track when specific changes were made to the project or specific files and by whom. So again, very useful if you need to track any errors or bugs being made unintentionally. And then it also allows you to safeguard your work by storing it, the entire project in a shared repository that's accessible by your entire team. So if you have somebody new comes to the team, they can instantly download the latest version of the project almost in no time at all and end up being very productive very quickly. So whilst source control is incredibly valuable for larger teams and long-term projects, I would still say small teams, small projects should also use it. For this tutorial, you don't need to use it as part of your multi-user effectively. It would be ideal, but as part of this tutorial, we'll be just focusing on Unreal Engine's built-in tools and using our persist changes to make these things happen. So, whether you're a student just learning Unreal, hopefully an indie developer, or a professional optimizing your workflow, multi-user editing is a real tool that can help really transform the way you collaborate. So, without further ado, let's fire up Unreal Engine, grab our keyboards, and we'll get started. Okay, so now we're back in Unreal Engine's Epic Games Launcher. So if we go to Unreal Engine and just go to your library tab, as you can see here, I have a few versions of the engine being used here. So one of the key features about using a multi-user project is that all users must be building off the same version of the engine. So please make sure that if you're using this, that your teammates are using the exact same version of the engine. So if I'm using 5.5, then your teammates must use 5.5. If you're on 5.3, then your projects all must be 5.3 versions. So it's one key thing to remember. So in here, I'm going to click launch. Once we do that, we're going to come to our project creation window. So within that, we're going to use a third person game template to build this from. So we'll just launch the engine and wait for the project window to open. Okay, so now the window is opened. We're simply going to go to games, and I'm going to build our project off a third person template. So I'm simply going to select it. I'm going to make sure I have a project location to start off with. I'm just going to make sure everything is blueprint, desktop maximum, and if you want, make sure the starter content is also enabled. The other critical factor about using multi-user projects is that all project names must be of the exact same. So the same way all engine builds have to be the exact same, i.e. 5.5, the project names will also match across systems. So in our case here, I'm going to create one called MU test, and then on subsequent client machines, they will also be called MU test as well. So that's a key thing, absolutely critical thing to remember. So they must be spelt the exact same way as well. And the other thing is that they almost create the exact same content to start off with. So it's going to be quite easy for this third person one. If everybody builds it off the exact same here and just enables starter content, it'll perfectly match. But again, this is where source control is a perfect example. It means that somebody could download the exact same workspace as their teammates, and that would be the ideal way to do this. But for our case here, say I'm just going to stick to third person, and I'm just going to select blueprint, desktop maximum starter content on all machines that will be connected to this project, and hence the reason why it'll all match. And now I'm going to hit create and wait on the template loading. So here we are, the project has now launched, and as you can see, it's just the regular third person template. So these projects don't typically come out of the box ready for multi-user sessions to be set up. So we need to enable what you call a plugin for it. So if you come up to edit and plugins, you'll notice it pops open this menu. So in here, we'll simply look for multi-user. Oh, if I can spell. So multi-user. And we're looking for this option here, multi-user editing. And we just simply click the little checkbox here and just say yes. Then we should get a moment. And then we'll need to restart. So once you restart, we'll come back and see what that looks like. Okay, now that we've restarted, how do we actually see the multi-user option appearing? So if you come up to window, you will see the multi-user browser is currently set. Here, if you click there, you'll get the actual pop-up appearing. So ideally, if we wanted, we could just click launch a server and try to collect a client to it. But I think it's better to configure it ever so slightly. So if you come up to the little cog here and beside it and click on it, you'll get this option appearing here from their project settings for it. So typically this enable multi-user button, make sure you put a tick beside it. And then what I also suggest then doing is placing, giving the machine you're using a name for it to be seen once we start getting people in the session. So I'm just going to call this machine Darren PC, and then I've given myself a nice color of purple. You can come in and choose whatever color you want. So in this instance, I'll select that. So that should be fine for that aspect. The other thing then we need to do on this server machine is, whilst we're still in project settings, if you scroll all the way down to the very bottom underneath plugins, there is an option for this thing called UDP messaging. So if you simply click on it, it will populate and present some elements in for you to enter here. So you can see there's this thing called Unicast endpoint. Now my machine seems to have pre-populated it, but whenever you start it, it should maybe say 0.00:0. So this Unicast endpoint is actually the IP address for the machine you're currently working on. So typically, if you don't know how to get that, it's an easy thing to do. So if you just launch a command window through Windows, so just simply hit your Windows button, type in CMD, and it launches this little window here. So once you've got this prompt, if you type in IP config and hit return, it provides you with the IP address of the machine you're currently working on. So in my case here, it's 192.168.50.100. So this is the number I want to take and bring into Unreal. So yours may be slightly different. So whatever it is, you bring it in here and then just type in 192.168.50.100:0. Okay. So yours will maybe be slightly different, obviously based on what number you get from your IP config. So the other option then we need to do is place these static endpoints. So I'll just delete this here so that you can see this in place. So currently it's looking for this. This is actually the machines that are going to connect potentially to this machine. So these would be, if you've another 3 machines that will potentially connect to it, ideally you would want to put in the 3 IP addresses here under the static endpoints. Now I'm only going to be adding 1 machine to this. So, and its IP address is 192.168.50.102. So I know that's the specific IP address of the other machine that's going to be connecting this. And this time we want to have its port address is 6666. So 4 6s. Okay. So again, if you have multiple machines you want to connect to it, if you had another 2 or 3 machines, you would add another one, put its IP address in, add another one, put its IP address in. Hopefully you get the idea. Okay. So with that done, I'm simply going to save off here, and now we need to do the same on the client machine. So we pop over to the other PC and we do the exact same thing here, except it's going to be the reverse. So this will be the Unicast endpoint on the client machine, and this machine will be the static endpoint. Okay, but we'll see that in practice in a moment. Okay, so now I'm actually on the second machine, the client machine that's going to connect to our server. So as I mentioned, we have to pretty much do the same thing again. So I'm just going to come to library. I'm just going to launch 5.51. Again, we have to be on the same engine build. I'm going to go to games as well. I'm going to use the exact same project type. So it's third person. I'm going to make sure it's blueprint, desktop maximum. And if you recall, we also enabled starter content on our server project. So I'm also going to make sure that is enabled, because again, we have to ensure that it starts with the same content. So this time, hopefully you can recall that this one has to be called the exact same as the other project. So it's AMU test. So let me just get my keyboard AMU test. Okay, so exactly the same. And once that's done, we simply hit create as per the first project. Okay, so as you can see, the third person template has launched once again on the client machine here, and guess what, we have to do the same things again. So because this hasn't got the plugins enabled, we need to come to plugins. Okay, so just edit plugins again. We're looking for multi-user. We find it, we turn it on. Yes, we need to do a restart. So once we restart, we'll come back to this. So now that we've restarted, we should be able to go up to window, and again we should be able to see our multi-user browser. So simply click on it yet again. This time we still aren't going to launch a server. We need to do the same things that we just did on the server machine. So if we click here, we can enable the multi-user toolbar. You can see it's asking to restart now. I'm just going to leave that for a second. Actually, I'll just restart later. This time I'm going to call it Darn PC Client, just so you can see that it's a separate machine when we join the server. And again, I'm going to give it a slightly different color, so let's go green this time. So we've got that set up, and then we need to come down to our UDP messaging yet again. So straight all the way down to the very bottom of project settings, find UDP messaging and click in here. So because this machine, its IP address is different. So if we do the exact same thing again here, just run cmd and type in ipconfig, you can see this machine has an IP address which is different from the other machine, which again is correct. So this time we're looking for 101. So up here I come to 192.168.50.101, and this time it's a :0. So I've just realized actually on the server machine that I've just enabled, I put in 102, so that's incorrect, so we'll have to fix that. So now under advanced, we want to get our static endpoint. So I come in here, and this time we put the server's IP address, so 192.168.50.100, and remember the port is 6666. Okay, so with that done, we should maybe set that as default. You might get a little message saying about that. Just it helps Unreal save, so just say yes. You may get this message about writable, just say yes again and okay. So that should remember that for that. And similarly under the multi-user editing, I would also just say yes to the setting to default. So now we're all good. So if I come up here and then just save all and then just restart this project because of the multi-user button. So you can see here it doesn't appear here, but once we restart, you should have the multi-user button at the top of the screen. So let's restart. Okay, so now that we've restarted, hopefully you can see that we now have that multi-user button option appearing here. So we can drop it down and you can say, see the multi-user settings that we were in. And we can see other options here to launch, see what sessions are in place and what's launching a server. But on this machine, I don't want this to be the server. This is going to be the client. This is going to be the one connecting to the session. So on that, we'll jump back to the first machine. Okay, so now that we're back in the server machine, I've just went ahead and made a few updates just to correct that IP address. So I've also just updated my display name to say Darn PC Server. And then under UDP messaging, I've just updated the static endpoint IP address. So I had originally 102, but obviously it was 101. So I've now updated that. So all this should be fine and dandy now. So once we come back in here, we're at the point of ready to create this server. So the server this is effectively where the hub is. This interface is the hub of where you will see all the connections taking place. So what I'm going to simply do here is click on the launch a server. So you can do it a few ways. You can click it here, you can click it here, and you can also click it up here as well. So you have three options. So let's just click the one in the middle that says launch a server. So as you can see down at the bottom there, it says launch the server has happened, and if you see at the back here, it's now changed to this thing called a session. So we'll need to create these sessions to start collaborating, and this is where we're going to invite people to our team. So when we do this, all we simply do is either hit create a new session or create a new session here. So let's just click the one in the middle, and I'm going to call it my first session, and then hit the. So you can now see the session has updated. This window is updated, and you can see now that these are the clients who are actually connected to this specific server. So currently this is only me. So what we'll do is we'll jump back into the client machine, and we'll get it to look for the server to see if it can see it, and then obviously see if it can see this session that we've just created. Okay, so now that we're back in the client, we want to look at our multi-user browser. So if it's not appearing there for you, again, just make sure you go to Window, Multi-User Browser, or I say you can come up to your settings here. Okay, so if I click here, open the session browser, you should now see that my first session has appeared. So great, that gives you an indication, and it shows you who is attached to that session. And then as you can see, it's me from the server. So Darren PC, if you remember, that was the name we give it. It gives you a bit of information about the project as well. So this is its ID, this is the session you've joined, who created it, what is the name of the project, and what is the engine version as well. So those are gives you a bit of detail here within your session management. So what we want to do here is we can right click, and we can go to join, or we can actually click this option up here at the top. So we just select it and then hit join. So once we do this, you will see, if I turn this off actually, so if I just turn it off here and try and do this so if I select this and hit join, you will now see that the two pieces are now communicating together. So it gives you an idea of what the map is and who is in this level along with you. So currently there's two people in here, the server machine and the client machine. This is a really useful little option here, presence. So you can see here, if you want to go to where the server machine person is, you can click on here, just jump to presence of the person, and hey presto, if we navigate around, you can actually see them, and they're moving about, having a look at you, and they can also drive about. So again, it's just, and then if you click update again, you can jump to where they are as well. So again, it gives you an idea of you're able to see each other. This is why we color coded each other, and it just helps you identify. So if you have done this and a session has not appeared in your browser, so it could be down to a few issues. So firstly, make sure that there's definitely a server running on the server machine. So you could also make sure that everybody's in the same network, so making sure your IP addresses are all correct. Other issues that could occur are perhaps the firewall on the LAN may be blocking connections, so that's when you may need to do a bit of IT work, or call upon your IT department to ensure that various ports, etc., is allowing Unreal Engine traffic So that may be something you may have to explore. And then it maybe comes down to the more common options whereby you aren't using the same engine version across the projects. So somebody's using 5.4 and somebody's using 5.5, those sorts of things, that the project names have been not named correctly. So all the projects must be MU test and spelled the exact same way, and all the content must be the exact same. So if you are getting options or this is not appearing, you will need to do those troubleshooting aspects first, and fingers crossed you can get it resolved using those tips. So now that we're able to see each other and move things apart, so what we can do now is actually start to collaborate. So in the next section, that's what we'll start doing. Okay, now that we've set up our sessions and that both users are now in the same level, let's put some of this to the test to make some changes across the two machines and see how those changes are synchronized in real time. So we'll start off with something quite simple here, like moving objects. Then we'll explore some other modifications that require a bit more like saving to appear in the other machine. So I'm currently on the server. You can see there's my good friend over here watching the same sort of area on the second machine. So if I was to select this object here and simply move it up in the sky, you will see on my client machine that those changes have appeared straight away as well. So then subsequently, if I rotate it, also happens. If I scale it, we also see those changes in play. So really straightforward to get things moving about. So if we were saying, oh, you're a DOP or director or something like that on a set, you say, oh, move that key asset over here, place it over in the ground. The director would say, oh, I don't like it there, let's move it over here. Well, again, this live collaboration allows for these things to happen in real time. So incredibly useful. As you can see, as we do this, we're getting a transaction appearing here of things that have actually happened on this asset. So who's done what to which thing. So I have selected this actor and I've done some sort of modifications on it. So it showed us how to move things, and it keeps a history of what has happened there. Okay, so the next part we'll look at how to save something, and sometimes an asset requires it to actually be saved before the update actually happens. Okay, so hopefully you see how easy it was there to save live changes for scale, rotate and move there. Incredibly easy. So sometimes other changes need things to be saved before you actually see the synchronization across the session. So if I was to right click here in the content browser, and I'm going to create a new material. So I've also left it at the content browser level in the client machine as well. So I'm just going to call it my session material. And once I hit return there, you should see the material has appeared actually in both machines. So if you notice here on the corner of the material, it also has this, like a little lock has also appeared, and you can see there when I hover over it, it says lock by you. And if I hover over it in the client, it says lock by Darren PC. So it gives you an indication of who is the one who has locked it. So it's again a very watered down version of source control, where you take ownership of something before you make changes to it. So let's do something to this. So if I was to come into the material, just into the editor very quickly, I'm going to press 3 on my keyboard and hit left click. I'm just going to drag those two things together, and I'm going to, create a red material. So you can see it's red here. And if I was to drag it on to my little cheese corner in my level, you can see obviously no changes have appeared. But once I hit save, on the asset, hit save. It's going to apply to the world, and 1, 2, 3, hopefully, there we go. It's appeared there, and look what's happened in the client machine as well. So those changes, once you press save, will automatically then apply across the session. And you can also see that the lock has now been taken off this material, so I'm finished with it. But if I was to go back into the client here, and in the client I double click on it, and let's say I select the color and I change it from red to, I don't know, green. Again, we're not getting those changes here, but if I hit save, it goes all the way through, and look at that. So we have both machines editing there together. So hopefully that gives you another indication. Sometimes to see a change filter through both things, you need to do that save thing. One final thing here. So another option that we can do to take ownership. So say on the client machine, if I was to right click, you can see under multi-user actions, I can also lock it as a client. So I can right click on it, and now if we hover over it, you can see it's locked by you. But if we look in the server machine, it's locked by Darren PC client. Okay, so again, multiple people across the session can take ownership of files just by simply right clicking on it. And then if I want to make changes to it, I wouldn't be able to do that. The local changes would happen on my machine, but it would not filter right across the session. So once you're finished with the file, you can simply right click and then unlock it. And another useful feature here is that if you right click and look at the asset history, you can actually see changes here of what has happened here to this individual file. So on here, it's been manipulated a few times, and twice by the server, one by the client. So again, it's just another option there for you to work through. So just multi-user actions, you can lock it, and you can see its asset history as well. So there are various other assets within Unreal that sometimes need you to save before you'll see those changes coming through. So for instance, if you made a landscape and you edited the shape of it, sculpted it differently or whatever, you would need to press save in your level before it would filter across to the other machines as well in the session. Things like the Foliage tool as well, if you were sculpting plants or grass or something on a landscape or an environment, you will only see those appear actually once you leave go of the mouse. So for instance sake here, if I was to come into the Foliage tool here, and let's say add some props here, and let's add the bush on here, and just hit save. So we've got the bush here, and then we'll just drop down the brush size to something a bit smaller and come here. And so I'm left clicking on the server machine, but as you see, nothing has appeared yet. But once I let go, you can see that the actual material has applied over in the client machine as well. So just to see that again, I'm left clicking on the server, drawing it out, but as you can see, nothing is updating in the client yet. But once I let go of my mouse, those changes filter across. So again, it's just another little quirk. Sometimes you either need to save, or as I finish the process of what you've done with that tool before those changes will come across. So if you notice, we're getting updates in our history about what changes are being made here. So again, it's just to make you aware that that's still happening as we work through this session. So another example I think would be useful to look at is maybe to create an actual blueprint. So if we were to come in here and just create a standard actor and call it BP session test. Okay, same thing again. Once you create that on one machine, you can see it has subsequently appeared over here in the actual server as well. So if I was to come into this and double click on it, and we'll come in and create a very simple blueprint. Let's add a cube. We'll scale it down. And we'll add a rotating movement to it, and we'll simulate. So we've got this awesome blueprint here. So if we hit save on that, you'll see that we've got it here in our level, or in our content drawer. But if we drag it into our level, you can see it's also appeared over in our client's machine as well. So again, it's just to give you an indication that, you know, when you create these blueprints, you can save them off, make sure you save your level, and that they will also appear across a machine as well. So with the blueprint added, if I simply hit play in my level, you know, I can go over and see that that is actually working. But as you can also see in the client machine, that you're seeing me run about, but the client is not seeing the blueprint in actual play mode. So what you would need to do is, on the client machine, you would also need to go into play mode for that to be seen. So now if we run over here, you will be seeing the actual blueprint in action. So again, sometimes you will actually need to play. You'll not see these things live in the editor. You may need to hit play to see them actually in effect in each session. So you simply just escape out of the play session in each machine, and you're back just to your editing mode then again. So hopefully that clears that up. So you can use blueprints, but you will need to hit play to actually see those in effect on each of the machines. So with the blueprint, if I come onto the client machine and do what we have done previously, you know, we can come on here and we can still lock the asset, so we take ownership of it. So if I was to actually come into the blueprint, you can see here that we've got this available. So I'm actually going to open the blueprint as well on the server machine and have a look at the event graph here, just so you see what can actually happen too. So if I was to, on the client machine, delete the rotating movement, let's say. So if I delete it and hit compile and save, you can actually see once I press that save button, those changes were actually translated over onto the server as well. So you could do live editing of blueprints. So if I were to, you know, draw this around that and press C and say do something here, again just hit compile and save, and look at that, in our other machine that change has also been brought across. So again, you could do live code sharing within a multi-user session. Again, nowhere near as robust as potentially Perforce or something like that, but as a quick collaboration tool, you could be opening things, commenting, making subtle changes, and subsequently putting that across the project. So hopefully that one helps as well. Okay, so now that we've seen how to move things in action, how to edit materials live, how to add blueprints, and how to manipulate those, I think one of the other things we could look at is, again, if you're working on a virtual production type set and you wanted to create like a sequence for other people to see. So within a session, we can also do that. So the first thing we need to do is right click, and we're going to create a level sequence. So we can just come up to the top and we can create a level sequence. So we'll call it ls underscore session demo. Okay, so when we do this, again, similarly, over in the client machine, the other machines in the session, we will see that appearing. Okay, so if I simply double click on it, you will see that the sequence automatically appeared in the other person's window. So you will see that it has appeared on both machines, and you can see that we actually have these additional options here appearing. So these are specific to when you're in a session. You can see these things appear. So if I wanted to create an animation here, we need a thing called the cine camera. So if we come up to cinematics and add a cine camera to our scene, and if I pilot that cine camera and bring it somewhere down, I don't know, here. So you can see I've put that in place here on the client machine. You can also see that it has also appeared. So if I was to create an animation based off that, if I just simply drag the camera into the sequence, you can see that this has been updated. And then if I was to make some sort of change to the camera, like for instance, just create a transform here, move it forward, and then let's see, just make that awesome change. So there's one of the greatest shots in film history just been made. So now if I hit play, you can see that that's actually scrubbing between the two machines. So again, it's an incredibly powerful way to collaborate for the filmmaking community. So again, that's how quick and easy it is. So just ensure that these two options are turned on, and you will be able to share and see those animations between multiple machines. So now that we've made a lot of changes, let's pretend we're coming to the end of our working day. So remember, everything that we're doing in here is effectively in a sandbox. It's not actually saving properly to your local file system. So in order to do that, we need to do a thing called persist changes. If you don't do this, then you will lose everything. So let's show you how to do that. So if you see here, just down under revision control, there is an option here to persist session changes. So if you simply click on that, you'll get a little message appearing saying yes. Sometimes you may need to type make files writable as well. So I'm just going to do it because my revision control isn't fully set up. So I'm just going to do that on this machine, persist, and then I'm going to do the exact same on the client machine, the other machine that was connected. So everybody who was in this session, so if you have 10 machines, everybody will need to do this in order to maintain these changes that you have all spent time doing. So I'm just going to select make writable, and then I'm going to select persist. So now you'll get that little message down the bottom there saying all changes successfully saved. So once our changes have been persisted, we're now in a position to effectively leave the session. Okay, so we can select this, and you can see here an option leave the current session. So once you've persisted, it's always good practice just to do that. So let's leave it. So you'll see now that you're no longer in the session, and if we look on the server machine, they are also gone now. So we're no longer seeing the client machine connected. So I'm going to do the same for the server. Just select it and then just leave that current session as well. So we've already done that, so I'm just going to say no. So now that we have persisted the changes in the project, and they're now saved locally to our drive, you will see here that the session is still showing in our multi-user browser because we still have that session existing, and we also still have the server running. So for good practice here, either once you're confident that all the changes you've made in that session are done and dusted effectively, then you should potentially delete that session. So you have a few options. You can delete it. If you feel like you may need to come back to it at a different point in time, you could also archive it. So by selecting archive, you could give it a name, when it was, the date and time, and you can see here I've already sort of clicked on that, so it's given me that. So if I just take the date, just delete it out, so it's giving me a rough idea when that was, and then just hit archive the session. That's all good there, and now we can select this one and delete it. Okay, so now that we have done that, we have got something that we can go back to. We can restore that session and bring it back. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I think that we have covered a sufficient amount from showing how to enable a multi-user in a session, how to launch a server, how to join sessions, how to add assets, how to make changes to those assets. And once you've done there, we've persisted those changes. And then subsequently, once we get to the end of the process, we either archive our session, if it's, you may go back to it, or let's say you can delete that session because you've made your changes, they're saved locally, and you're no longer going to need to go back to those. So if you then need to start a new instance, it would be following the same process again, creating a new session and getting people to join those new sessions. So hopefully you've found this useful. I'm intending to continue this as maybe a series of tutorials around multi-user, and then potentially bringing this into another application called Switchboard around virtual production side of things and how multi-user is key for that. But I hope you enjoyed this and found it useful, and thanks very much for your time. So we'll just leave our server, and thanks very much.